Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to OKX Hackathon Workshop number 5. So today we are honored to have Vince from Unstoppable Domains. Hello, Vincent.
Hey everybody, how you doing?
Cool. And for those who are watching this video, if you haven't joined our Discord or registered for a hackathon, please go ahead and do so. And if you don't have a team or don't have any teammates on site, please go to our Discord, find grouping on the OKX Hackathon channel, and you will find some on-site team members over there. Okay, cool. So today will be our last workshop for OKX Hackathon. Later, we're gonna put this video on Notion and Discord and also on Twitter. Okay, perfect. So I'm gonna handle the stage to Vincent.
Alrighty. All right, let's share my screen here and try not to do make a complete fool of myself while I do this. Let's see here. All righty. Perfect. I hope everyone can see my screen. Looks like we should be should be good. So we can make this bigger if we need to, but let's just go for it. So yeah, I'm going to do kind of an intro on Unstoppable Domains, what we're all about, do a brief walkthrough of a few of our services, and then we're going to do a deep dive on our login product, which is essentially a Web3 SSO, as it were. So should be fun. We're going to do some demos. We're going to actually do some coding together too. Yeah, let's make it a good time. So Unstoppable Domains is all about Web3 domains, which is just about really owning your identity. And I know that's a very broad term, but we kind of break it down as best we can. So on one hand, it's about being able to log in and bring your name and user data with you when you log into dApps, websites, wallets, things like that, that you'd typically get from, say, a Google SSO, but also bringing in those Web3 elements like wallet address or addresses, and both on-chain and off-chain data. But it's also a name for, as the slide suggests, getting paid. And what we mean by that is, say you're using Trust Wallet or Atomic Wallet, rather than having to type in your 40-character hexadecimal gibberish of an address, you can instead type in, say, Sandy NFT or shadbolt.polygon, which is mine. And then it's also a name for your Web3 profile. So for those that don't know, when you buy or own a unstoppable domain, you actually get a website along with it, which we think is pretty cool. And on that website, we display everything from your social handles to your domain to any of the 300 crypto addresses that are tied to it, any badges you might own, which we'll dive into in a little bit. So we create this real identity and mechanism that you can bring with you and use throughout your Web3 journey, which not only makes it easier to, say, onboard users from more of a Web2 space, but also eases the whole learning curve when it comes to Web3. So I spoke on this already, but this is the profile page in its glory. And we'll take a gander at mine as well, so you can kind of see how it works. And on the right here, you might be able to see this login with Unstoppable. It's a little bit of an older screenshot, but the key we want to make, or the key point I want to make with this screenshot, is you'll notice that things are optional. And that's a huge part of what we're all about, is that we want users to actually own their data. It's not like, say, a Google sign-on where you're giving the website you're logging into who knows what in terms of data. You can not only see what the dApp is requesting, but you can opt out, which we think is a huge aspect of not only privacy, but ownership. And so it's something that we think is really cool. And again, we'll do it more of a deep dive on how this works as we go along. So yeah, one of the first things I want to talk about before we go into our login and things is resolution and reverse resolution. Those familiar with how ENS Domains does it, very, very similar principle, except ours is a little bit more, I don't want to say robust, but because we can support so many more tokens, as I mentioned, 300 different ones can be tied to a singular domain. Our resolution service is a little bit interesting, and you can do some really, really cool things with it. So on the one hand, we've got just resolution, which is I'm going to input my domain name instead of my wallet address, which is not only easier for your user, it's a great UX experience. But on the back end, from a coding perspective, you're still working with wallet addresses. So in terms of blockchain interactions or interactions that you're otherwise familiar with in, say, send flows or portfolio websites, basically anywhere that a user would normally type in a wallet address, they can instead type in just a domain name, which can be as little as 3 characters, say, 99.x or something like that. So we make it really, really simplistic. And then on the back end, there's no real funny business. You can just run with whatever wallet address you get. And so if we're looking at, I mentioned Trust and Atomic Wallet. So if you were to go into those wallets and type in, say, johndoe.x, and you were sending, say, Polygon or Matic on the Polygon chain or something like that, we can actually resolve a specific address that the user set for that token for that chain, which is where I said, or where I mentioned, we can get really granular and really do really interesting things. And so, I'm sending Solana to this domain. Our resolution service will be like, okay, they're sending this token. They've got this address set on their domain. This is where it's going to route to. And so we can do really, really granular, granular sends, I should say. And then reverse resolution is, as the name suggests, just the inverse. So instead of taking a domain name and turning it into an address, we instead take an address and turn it into a domain. So with this, it's really just to clean up the UI. It's particularly useful for, say, leaderboards or anywhere that you're displaying anywhere you're displaying a wallet address, truthfully. It could be as simple as somebody logs into your website using MetaMask and you're just displaying the wallet address in, who knows, the top right corner or something like that. You can instead reverse resolve that. So instead of displaying this nice long address or more than likely truncated address, you can just display the domain name. Or in the case of leaderboards, we can cut it right down again. So it's just that it just makes things human readable, which goes a really, really long way. And in terms of an example for that, I do have a slide with a bunch of links, but let's take a look at, we'll say, our official demo, which is really just a matter of you type in a domain. So I'll put in mine here, press enter, and it's going to bring in everything that I have associated with this domain. So in this case, it's brought in my PFP. It's brought in my owner details. So not only the domain name and token ID, name hash, all that good stuff, but my owner address, which may or may not be the same as the addresses I have set. Registry, the blockchain it's on, really just standard like metadata of sorts. And then the key value is this. So in my case, I don't have too many addresses set on my domain. I've only got a handful, truthfully. But you can see all of the different info you can get. And in my case, I've also got an IPFS website tied to my domain. So it's really a one-stop shop for really anything that somebody can tie to their domain. And then here's an example JSON body that you get in response. If we wanted to look at a more advanced example, This is Jim, lovely human. So you can see, again, we get that basic metadata, but now we're seeing, oh, there's a lot more addresses that, we can send tokens to. And so we can actually have integrations where we can get as granular as being like, we support Phantom, but we're only going to do it on the main net. We don't send Phantom over Ethereum or anything like that. So we can do some really, really cool things with resolution. And if we look at actually one of our partners, Revoke Cash, so if I typed in, so again, we could do address or domain, but I'll type in mine. I'm sure I'll embarrass myself with something that shows up on this list, but you can see that it resolved to my personal address, my wallet address, and displayed here, which I think is great. And we can ignore the rest of this, but you can see just how easy that is. And if we go just the wallet address, you can see it pulls up the domain name as well, hence the reverse resolution. So it does kind of both. So you can kind of see the point there. User can enter either, works either way, nice and clean. But the goal for today, now that I've done some brief introduction on our other really cool integration, but the goal is login. So I'll jump back into the slideshow here. So truthfully, as the slide suggests, it's your name. You own it. All of our domain names are one-time purchase. So my shadbolt.crypto is never going to expire. I own that for life. It's an NFT. And so that will stick with me, which is a big place where we differentiate. And as I mentioned, we can use that to log into various different websites that have integrated our login solution. So here are two more up-to-date screenshots where you can see it's just a matter of typing in your domain name, right? And you're going to say, hey, this DApp or this website, whatever it may be, wants access to your domain records, which is just, there you go. It's all public anyway. And information about your wallet, which is, also public. But you can see your email address. So I'll touch on this a little bit more. It's kind of a spoofed address that dApps get, but there's a reason for that. Is opt-in, or rather opt-out. So, and same with humanity checks. So we can start to see these layers where it's like, me as a user, I don't necessarily want to share my email with you, or like I couldn't care less if you want to know if I'm human, right? Like we can start to really make some interesting things. And in this case, LuckyPlay.io actually implemented a system where if the user doesn't provide their email, their UI will still work. It just won't be as good of an experience. Or vice versa, you provide your email, great, you get to skip this next step on the sign up sheet or something like that. So you can do some cool things, and it's all about making it, I suppose, worth the user's while to share that information with you. So I touched on this a little bit, but benefits to partners. So super easy authentication. It's the user types in their domain. They can essentially just click sign and away you go. And the signature is just to authorize the dApp to access that information and not. So it's really just a couple clicks. And again, we'll do a couple examples of it. And then data permissions, as I mentioned, so you can really make it worth the while of the user to opt into sharing that data. And in some cases, we can make certain things required. Be like, I can't implement a catch where if they don't provide their email, our system's just not going to work. And so we can say, you know what? No, we need to make this mandatory. And we'll touch on that as well during our example. So we can do some cool things there. And then right here, this bullet point here, establishing one-to-one communication. We'll get to this, but we can actually do, or for those that integrate our login, we have a very basic, albeit very useful analytics dashboard where you can not only see wallets and domain names that have signed into your app, but you can see how frequently, when was the last time they did so, what was the information they opted to share with you. And so you can actually get a list of your users in one place, and see, like, oh, we rolled out this change, and or we want to do this marketing campaign, and you can get a list of the emails or something, and you can do some cool things. And then increased security. Yeah, because you don't actually have to store anything on your end if you don't want to, because everything is already stored. So there isn't a need to store user emails on your end if you don't want to, or names or anything. Like, you can pre-populate or pre-configure profile pages as users sign in, because all of that information comes with the domain. So again, really cool things. And then from a user standpoint, I mean, it's fantastic. It's easy to sign in, or sign up and sign in. And then again, I'm trying to drive this point home. Opt-in data, which goes a really, really long way. And leading into the privacy forward and 100% user-owned aspect. It's that much easier to use. And again, leaning on that SSO-esque, but with the option of opt-out for sharing your data. Now, in terms of data that we can share, pull in, and things through login, we call them scopes. No real reason why we call them scopes, but we do, in which we have a lot. We've got a lot of different scopes you can pull in and use. So we'll kind of dive into, or do more of a example of this screenshot here. But the idea being that a user can go in and manage their domain, and they can tie their name, website, and IPFS hash, but website, location where they are, their social handles, which you can see here, which they can then verify, humanity check, email, and all of these pieces of off-chain data, essentially. And so through scopes, you as a DApp can request access to all of these things. And I will share or just show you a really long list of everything you can request. And again, we can do that optional flag. So be like, you know what? This is really cool. And I would love to create a profile page that has user socials on it. Or, maybe I'm making a messaging app, or I'm making a community-based app or something like that, where I want all of these social handles. But, whether they provide it during login or they provide it after the fact, we just want them. Throw an optional flag on there. Or it's like, no, like, we created this app that uses, I don't know, the Twitter API or something like that, and we absolutely need to have their social handle. It's kind of like part of our sign-on process. Then we can drop the optional flag. So we can do some cool things. And again, much like a resolution, we can get fairly granular with what you request and what you need. And so Unstoppable actually works with partners to identify what they absolutely need versus what could be opt-in. And then subsequently, if it is opt-in, how do we make it as smooth as a UX as possible if the user opts not to share it? And so we work really closely with partners on how to do this. And in most cases, most partners are like, yeah, we can take care of it, and that's great. But in other times, we hop on a call or whatever, and we walk through it. And then I mentioned this previously regarding the email. So you could see in this screenshot, your typical Gmail. But what we actually do when a user logs in or is managing their domain, they can actually enable essentially spoofing of their email. So enable, say, aaron.x@ud.me. And when the user does this, anytime they sign into an app and share their email, the DApp isn't going to get, sodk408@gmail.com. They're going to get a aaron.x@ud.me dash super long hash dot et cetera, et cetera. And so not only is the email different per DApp, and the user can actually go in and like revoke access and all that stuff. But it also semi-anonymizes those emails. So in some cases, it could be as simple as, I have an embarrassing email. And in other cases, it could be, no, I don't want anyone to know my personal email. So like if X website gets, gets knocked on by whatever hacker, they don't have access to my personal, they get this spoofed one. And then I can, as the user, can, deprecate that email. So we can do some, or the user has complete control over that, which I think is really cool. And we did this with Skiff. So it's all end-to-end encrypted as well, which we really like. Now, in terms of a demo, so you can actually see what it looks like. I'll give you our I guess, true official demo website. So essentially, really easy. User's going to click a button, and it's going to open a modal. So in this case, as I mentioned, we make it as simplistic as possible. So I'll take you all the way back. But so it's going to open up, and it's going to look like this. And there's two things that I really want to call out here. One is we can actually just type in our name, press continue, and away we go. Or if you're onboarding new users. And so in this particular instance on this site, we're the only login option. So if you didn't have a domain name, obviously you wouldn't be able to log in. We circumvent that by adding the ability or flow to actually go through and get your own domain name. So if I type in, Vincent.wallet, you're like, yeah, that's not available. And, like, oh, I really like Vincent.888. I can go and buy it, but I can also go through and grab myself a free one. So at the very least, I can log into the website, just get essentially just a free onboarding flow is really what it is. And then along with that, we have some educational materials that are baked into the login. But I digress. So we can go through this flow of onboarding new users, essentially make that call to action should a user not own a domain already. And this is really for, it's a login option. People can go and get one. But it's particularly useful if we're the only login option on a particular site. So I will type in one of my domains, press continue. I'll connect with a different method. So again, see this manage access. I can go through, toggle things on and off as I will, which again, opt in or opt out. And then we provide a long list of options of actually connecting or signing the access to this data. So in this case, I'll just sign with our app real quick. So I'll go ahead and there we go. Beautiful. We're all signed in, and away you go. And then it's going to pull in all of this information nice and slow and nice and pretty, like, because again, official demo. Now, if I were to log out and log in again, right? So that was the initial flow. I'm going to log in again. It's immediately going to bring me to this screen, and away we go. So we essentially skip all that initial stuff once a user has signed in previously. So it's as simple as, in this case, doing Face ID on my iPhone, or that'll trigger MetaMask and you click sign. So it's really, really fast. That's the whole SSO aspect of it. Now you'll also see it brought in a few pieces of information. So IPFS hash, again, that's my website. My wallet address in particular is my owner address of this domain, pardon me, and then my domain name, of course, that I use to sign in. In terms of profile data, again, I opted to share this. So you can see there's my name, there's my bio, here's my location, cheers from Canada, and then there's my profile page. Again, moving through, I digress. Let's see this load in. And here's the example of that spoofed email. So you can see it gets real long, real quick. Generally speaking, if a dApp is actively using their email in the UI, we just tell them to printify it. You can use this email on the back end, but maybe make the front end say like shadpool.polygon@ud.me or ud.route or whatever works. Really just printify it to whatever fits your UI. But that is an example of what a spoofed address or a spoofed email would look like. Verified wallets. We'll touch on this in a minute when I go over my domain and how we can customize it and scopes and all that jazz. But you can see I've got 2 verified addresses, ETH and HBAR. And we'll explain why those are verified and the purpose of those in a little bit. And then badges, again, pieces of information that comes in. So these are really just proof of ownership in some capacity. So we'll actually, you know what? I've got a better example for this. We'll get into that in a minute. And I digress. And then there's a summary which just shows it all. But if we looked at say Bandit Network, so this is one of our partners that we integrated with, and the reason I wanted to bring them up is you can actually see when we click Connect Wallet, we're not the only option. Our goal is not to explicitly replace all of the other login options, but rather to be listed aside it. And so not only does that give your end user more options for whatever they'd be interested in, but it also doesn't force you as a developer to replace your existing solutions, which we think is really important because we don't want to compete against MetaMask in one aspect, right? It's nice and quick, but we also want to provide that bridge, that kind of like Web 2.5, meaning Web 3 sign-in solution for dApps that would otherwise be limited to, say, an injected wallet on their browser or something like that, as an example. So that's that. And then I wanted to go over the profile pages because I did mention that earlier, and explicitly how this relates to login. So here's my example profile page. I'm sure I'm embarrassing myself with something that's in this token gallery, but I digress. You can see all of the wallet addresses that are associated with my domain. Here are my socials. Here's my website. And again, here are the badges. And I mentioned that badges are proof of ownership, which could be a really, really cool thing for login, and actually something that we're doing with a partner yet to be announced. But what we can do is we can actually say, hey, I only want people that I only want people that own crypto tech women to be able to log into my website. Or I only want people that own Crazy Bears Official to be able to log into my website. And so in our, our official demo where you could see the badges and list it out, you can actually check and be like, hey, this user tried to sign in. Let's check their badges. Oh, they don't own this badge. Make a call to action or something and reject the login or what have you. So you can do some cool things around badges, which I think is pretty awesome personally. But then also in terms of user scopes that people can bring in, which tab am I looking for? You know what? That's fine. So if we go to my domains here and we go into my Polygon one that I've been using, you can see me as the user, how much I can set. So be like, you know what? I want my name, bio, location, and website and stuff on my profile page to be private. Or you know what? I want my socials to show up on my profile or token gallery or badges, et cetera, et cetera. And then most importantly, the crypto addresses. So you can see I've got a handful set here, but we have over 300, very long list as I scroll through this, of tokens that you can set on a domain. So you can get a ton of both on-chain and off-chain data from just typing in chatbot.polygon, which we really pride ourselves on. It's really again, that one-stop shop for user information. on Web3. Yeah, so with that said, I actually wanted to go in and do a little bit of coding with you, and feel free to follow along. Because what we're going to do for the login, because I really want to emphasize, not only is it great from a UX standpoint and great for the user, great for the DApp, but it's really, really fast to do. In fact, I'll make a goal for us. We're going to try to do it in the next 5 minutes, which I think we're going to be able to do. We'll see. Depends on my typing skills. But yeah, we're gonna do it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to head into our docs here. So, here's a 5-minute integration guide. We'll even try to beat it as best we can. So yeah, we're gonna jump right in. I've prepped already a quick React app. So for those that are going to follow along, just npx create dash react create dash app, and it'll build, and away you go. So what you can see here, it's really just a very simplistic function called login demo, and it's got 2 buttons. That's it. So really, really simplistic. And if we take a look at the actual website, that's what it looks like. It's super bare bones, but that's the point. I want to show that it can work with any UI. We've seen it on a really pretty one with Bandit, and now we're gonna take a look at the other end of the spectrum. And there's really no wrong way to do it. Is something I want to kind of emphasize here. And while I'm doing this in React, I do want to call out that in our docs, we've got guides for a lot of different things. So we're going to do the login with a pop-up one today. We could do login without a pop-up. This is particularly useful for embedded browsers, if you don't know. Embedded browsers, by, I guess, design, we'll say, don't or disallow pop-ups, so that you are aware. But I digress. We can do it on the server side. We can do Web3 modal, with a caveat there being it has to be V1. I know they're pushing out V2 and deprecating V1, but we're working on that one. Web3 React, both V6 and V8. Web3 onboard, or otherwise known as block native, is actually a faster integration. It's 3 minutes, so that you're aware. And then Morales, as well as Auth0, which is again more in line with that Web 2 2.5-esque side of things, and then of course our Web 3 side of things. So to get started, that should have bought ample time for anybody that was following along to create the React app. So our first step is going to be actually adding the login package to our app. So I'm going to use Yarn here. If you're using NPM or NPX, feel free to follow along there. I'm just more of a Yarn junkie, as it were. So going to be as simple as that. This will do its thing pretty quickly. And then once we're done here, so we're added, that's great. So in our function here, or our file here, we're going to make it as easy as possible. So import uauth from, let's see here, it is, there it is. Beautiful. And then once we've got that, we're going to instantiate that. So we'll just say const uauth equals new uauth, something like that. Okay. Now, we're not quite ready yet. So what we want to do is we actually want to head to this website here. So our dashboard. In fact, I'll disconnect now. So when you first go to dashboard.auth.unstoppabledomains.com, you're going to be presented with this screen. Really simplistic. Just connect with any wallet, really, wallet of your choice, and then you're going to be presented with this page here. And this is kind of self-service portal of sorts. So you can see the login integration, which is what we're going to be doing now, a resolution service, which is what I talked about when we first started. Domain distribution, I didn't explicitly cover, though if you have questions, feel free to reach out. We can talk about that one as well. And then finally, the last step, which is submitting your app integration, which again, we'll get to once we've completed our little demo here. So first thing, just head over to clients and click create client. So you're going to see something like this. Client name, I'll just call this Hackathon, something like that, really whatever you'd like. And this is where we can get some pretty cool things. You can set your own logos. You can set your own policy URLs. You can set your own terms of service URLs. We make it fairly customizable. And then in our login, we can see our client metadata. This is going to be particularly important momentarily. And then our scopes, which I said we'd go into, and then our redirect URI. So first thing, we're going to go talk about scopes. So now that I've pulled this up, and hopefully it's not too small. If it is, I'll go to the other tab anyway. You can see all of the different scopes that you're able to request. And we can get fairly granular, being like, hey, I want a user's Twitter social. I don't care about Discord, YouTube, or anything else. Great. You can explicitly request the Twitter social. Or, you know what, I really only want their profile picture when they sign in. I could care less about the rest. Great. We can do that. And so we can kind of break it down into all of these things. And again, we've got optional flags for majority of them. So we can do some cool things. And for those that couldn't see that, here's a little bit of a bigger list. And then if there's something or a piece of user information that you want that we don't have, send it our way. We're always adding to this list, and we're more than welcome to explore anything that you think would be really useful to add, because obviously we want to make it as best as we can for as many people as we can. But so that's scopes. So we can get a lot of user information from a login, as you could see. And now redirect URIs. So as I mentioned, we do have a pop-up, and the redirect URI is essentially we'll call it a string compare. So when the user completes the flow in the pop-up, where does that pop-up redirect to? And it's incredibly important. The redirect URI is the exact same, like down to the dot, www, etc., to your actual web URL. So in our case, we're going to be working off of localhost port 3000. So we're good. But if we're talking like, you know what, I'm hosting on port 5001, we need to actually change this. So we do HTTP, localhost port 5001, right? Something like that. And then we'd use that in our config. So to get started, now that we've done our branding and our configurations with the redirect URIs, we've figured out what scopes we're interested in. We'll even X those out, and that doesn't disallow you from using a scope. It just cleans up the configuration. And then we're going to copy this. We're just going to click copy configuration. And then we're going to go back to our code, and we're going to paste it in. So now we've instantiated our UAuth library, and the client ID, so that you are aware, is just to essentially match the OpenID configs. So when we get a request, how do we know we're getting the right branding and all that jazz from your end? So we can do that, and then we can go as simple as UAuth or await UAuth dot login with a pop-up. There you go. That's it. That one line of code is going to handle the entire flow. In fact, if we're really interested, we could even do const response equals that, and then we'll console log the response in here. Okay, so we've got that more or less figured out. And then for logout, same principle, uauth dot logout, and away you go. Oh, I might want a sync in there. So away you go. Oh, we're just gonna move that real quick. There we go. Now everything's a little bit more happy. Okay, so there you go. We've got our initial config and instantiation of the package. We've got our singular line of code that is going to log us in. And then we're going to print the response. And this response is going to be a JSON object that contains all of the user scopes that we requested. So in this case, we're going to be really basic, OpenID and wallet. And then we're just going to log out. So we're going to try that. We are going to start that real quick. Hopefully it's not too angry at me. Let's hope everything works as expected. You never know on demos. See, there we go. So we're going to press login. There's our pop-up. It's already approving on mobile because I've logged in on this browser already. So we're just going to sign in there. And here is our JSON response with everything in it. So we can see hashes, nonces, subs. So there's my domain name, there's my wallet address. You know, we really didn't request too much in there. So if we were to go back in and say, you know what, I really want email, and I want, let's say, profile, but we'll make it optional or something like that. So we'll save that. That'll recompile and do all its jazz. So if we log in again, let's see, we'll connect with a different method here. So again, here it's going to show, you know, what we can opt in and opt out. Again, I didn't add the optional flag to the email address. I, as a user, can't opt out of that. But profile information, yeah, you know, the DApp doesn't necessarily need it. We don't need it for our simple app here. So yeah, we could opt in or opt out as we so choose. But we'll go ahead and log in and we'll approve access to everything. So we'll do that. There we go. And so you can see, you know, we've expanded our scopes. And here's some of the profile information. So there's my email. Here's my IPFS site, my location, my name, my picture, should you want it, my profile, all that jazz. So we were able to pull in all that information with by adding email and profile. So that's as simple as it is. And then from a logout standpoint, you know, we click logout and that's that. We're not console logging anything, so you know, away you go. So you can see just how simple this can be. And we did that in, well, minus explanations, probably less than 5 minutes. But yeah, so you can see how easy it is. And you might be wondering, you know, hey, what if I really need the email, but the user doesn't have it set? In the login flow. So if we go back and press login, we'll backtrack a little bit here. So if I were to go through and go to sign in, the actual modal will prompt me as a user to enter something. So if I'm missing my Twitter handle, but you absolutely have to have it as an app and it's not an optional flag, the user will be prompted to put it in. And if it is an optional flag and they don't have it, the user will be prompted to enter it, but are also presented a skip button so that they can just obviously skip over it. But yeah, so that's more or less login. You can see how fast it is. Hopefully you were able to follow along. And if not, our exact walkthrough of how to do this is actually in the docs as well. And then the final thing I wanted to touch on is our analytics. So I mentioned this previously, where you'll get essentially just a table of wallet addresses, who's logged in, how frequently they've logged in. Here are the pieces of users information that you've requested on those users, who have provided it, who haven't. And so you can do those reach outs to those users or get feedback or whatever it is. So you can break down, not only see how popular our specific login is, so which users logged in through login with Unstoppable. So again, it's more in line with when we're the only option, but we don't necessarily want to replace other options either. So it's up to you as a DApp on what's going to make the most sense. But so the analytics are really just to create a user list for you on your behalf to show popularity. Who are your biggest users? Who are your smallest users? Maybe you want to send out more like, hey, we missed you kind of emails, which I know are annoying when we receive them, but still, I digress. If you want to send those out to maybe the users that haven't been around in a while, or something along those lines, we can do that. Now I'm gonna play a quick demo. Hopefully that's playing nicely. So here we're just going to go through. You can see a list of clients in this case. We can just go to the analytics tab, and it's going to show, you've gotten 14 new users. These are the scopes you requested. Here's the login count for a specific day, and then there's the table at the bottom of how often have they visited. Did they provide the user scopes that you were interested in? What are those pieces of information that you were provided, et cetera, et cetera. So you can see, essentially see all that information for any login that you've implemented. So that's more or less how analytics works. And with that, should you want to go through and implement login, again, that Web3 SSO throughout your hackathon, or even if you're interested in resolution, which again, we can do some cool things. We've actually got an email here, so partner engineering at Unstoppable Domains. This will come straight to myself, actually. So feel free to send any questions this way, and we'll hook you up with whatever answers we can provide. And we're always welcome to hop on a call and help out. There's never a stupid question. Believe me, I've asked my fair share, and there's never a stupid question. So reach out with whatever you have, and with that, we're kind of through the presentation.
Perfect. Thank you, Vincent, for the amazing presentation, and thank you for your time.
My pleasure.
And I'd like to also thank Unstoppable Domains for working with us for this hackathon and providing generous bounties. So for this workshop, you have learned about how to claim the bounties for all those hackers joining this hackathon. Don't forget to claim your Unstoppable Domains bounties, okay? Cool. And for all the hackers, you have now completed all the workshops. I hope you have a general idea about what to build, and you have a good understanding about OKX and OKX Chain. So I guess I will see you guys tomorrow. Cool. Great. Thank you, Vincent. Thank you, everyone. We will see you tomorrow in Santa Clara. Bye-bye.
Good luck.